This is Steve Sapodowski, publisher of BayouBuzz.com. It's Friday morning, and so we're going to be talking with Rob Maness, Colonel Rob Maness, and we're going to be talking about state issues. In particular, I think we're going to focus on gun control and some other issues with Colonel Maness. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Steve. It's good to be back.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So we're starting week 2 of the Louisiana Legislature, or right around that.
Mm-hmm.
So your takeaway, if I might ask, what is going on?
Well, really not much has been done on the budget from what we can see so far. They're still having hearings in the appropriations committee meetings. There has not been any tax bills passed out of committee that I'm aware of. So things just seem to be pretty slow, but there are a lot of bills being talked about. I know coming up next week are some gun control legislation that those of us that believe in the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms will be challenging that, and we'll be calling on all citizens that support the Second Amendment and the Constitution in general to call their legislator to fight against that and make sure that the legislature is considering policies that will actually work to protect students in schools and other public venues, so that we can try to prevent the shootings like what happened down in Parkland, Florida, which is what's generated a lot of this issue.
Sure. Okay, so if anybody has a question, please go ahead and post your question on Facebook or comment, either one, and we'll read your question or comment to the extent that we can. So go ahead and post. So before we got started, you were telling me about a news story dealing with a military person, something that you read that was in the Advocate this morning. Let's just focus on that just for a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. That's right. Just broke last night in the Advocate and came to my attention. There was a veteran over at Pearl River that the headline is it was beaten by St. Tammany Parish deputies. The case has been turned over to the federal authorities by Warren Montgomery, the district attorney for District 22, which I think is the right thing to do. He turned it over to the federal authorities, considering there may have been a civil rights violation. This individual, this veteran, was beaten pretty badly, ended up with lacerations on his face, bruises on his body. You can see the pictures in the article by Sarah Bagonis at the Advocate. Mr. Cambry's his last name. He was not having a good day. This is not it's not atypical or untypical of anybody, but veterans with PTSD, those kind of things, can suffer from symptoms and issues pretty much any time. And he's an Army combat veteran, so it's pretty apparent that he's suffered from mental health issues and PTSD and those kind of things. So some of his friends got worried about him and asked the police department to do what's called a welfare check on him, which is really just stopping by and making sure that the guy's doing okay. You know, we have a big effort in the United States and in the state of Louisiana and St. Tammany in particular to try to prevent suicides wherever we can, and veterans have a very high suicide rate. It's still over 22 a day from what the Veterans Administration publishes and everything. So, apparently the police department from Pearl River went out there and they wanted to get the guy to medical attention, to a hospital, and he did not resist, but he didn't want to go. So they called the sheriff's department to see if they could get some help. And unfortunately, when the sheriff showed up, apparently they thought that they needed to use physical force with the gentleman. It doesn't appear that he tried to use physical force against them. He was tased. He was beaten with baton. He said he was knocked unconscious. The injuries appear to be pretty well documented in the article. The danger here is that, we don't want veterans or anybody for that matter to be deterred from reporting when they do have mental health issues or have concerns with how they're dealing with their post-traumatic stress symptoms and those kind of things. We want them to be able and want them to be encouraged to go seek medical attention. And this could definitely deter that if it gets out of hand. I hope the feds get back to District Attorney Montgomery very quickly so that we can get the facts. And if people need to be held accountable, then they're held accountable. But it's just a terrible way to treat a veteran.
Sure. You would think that, though, I'm just throwing this out, you would think that the sheriff's office would not be mistreating a veteran unless provoked. I mean, I'm just throwing it out to you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm shocked. I'm in a state of shock that this happened here in St. Tammany. We don't have these types of issues with our sheriff's department. So I'm very surprised. I'm very interested to get to the facts, but it sure looks like they used too much force. Not saying that force wasn't needed,
right.
But it sure looks like they used too much force. So I'm very surprised. I'm very interested. Has voiced his concerns, and we'll just have to wait and see what the investigation turns out.
Absolutely. So obviously there's a real problem with veterans, coming back, having PTSD, as you mentioned. Is there any recommendations that you would have, given your experience, in terms of what the state can do to really ensure that something like this doesn't happen, or to really take care of those veterans that really need this help? I mean, they've sacrificed so much.
Well, one of the programs that really works well is what's called peer-to-peer counseling or peer-to-peer mentoring. I would like to see the state and federal veterans administrations implement as much of that type of program as they possibly can. We have literally dozens of small veterans group nonprofits that practice those kinds of things. One of the things the state could do is really put some energy into the veterans groups networks and focus on peer-to-peer counseling and recruit mentors and peers that were willing to participate in that, because that's the best treatment that I've seen personally work across the board, is when a peer that's been in the experience that the individual is having trouble has been in and spending time with them over not just a day, but a long period of time, and establishing a relationship. So those are the kinds of programs that we see work very, very well. Here in St. Tammany, we just had a homeless veterans facility is starting to take shape over here. It's called Camp Nora. It's run by an Air Force veteran, Ed Lewis. Cowboy Ed Lewis is establishing that. He's got the facility, and they're working on getting up and running. And I'm sure that they'll use peer-to-peer counseling in that facility, in that type of facility. And we can also see that established at the local level. I know there is some of that going on with the mental health folks here in St. Tammany, but I'd like to see a concerted effort in that regard to establish more formal programs.
Some traits you're born with, like your mom's eyes, but your smile is your own. Protect it with Arm & Hammer toothpaste. It works differently using the natural power.
Okay, what happened was I don't know if you heard the noise in the background. Did you hear the noise in the background? Because
nope.
Okay, fine. There is one of your visitors to your page just mentioned, actually it was Neil Wood, attack on Travis Air Force Base this morning, and put up a link. So let me just share it with you. This is from this is on CBS that he shared with us. A car loaded with propane tanks ran through the main gate at Travis Air Force Bank in North California on Wednesday night. So that's actually from a couple days ago. Are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not, but I'm not surprised. We've seen this type of activity before, especially since 9/11/2001, where folks have attempted to attack military installations. This is a tactic that's been has been used in Europe before, using propane tanks to load it on board a vehicle and then approach a security gate and activating the device to try to create as much damage and havoc as possible.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions or comments, go ahead, put it on Facebook, and we'll do our very best to be able to ask Rob Maness about those, about your questions and or comments. By the way, go ahead and share so that others have an opportunity to be able to get knowledge from Rob Maness, Colonel Rob Maness. I'm sure that he'd love to hear from you and to have this information shared. So, gun control. You mentioned earlier, before we got before we got started, and then when we got started, that you anticipate there's some gun control legislation or gun legislation that is going to, I guess, be discussed in the legislature next week.
Yeah, we've seen several legislators have filed gun legislation. One of them includes a ban on the AR-15, the semi-automatic rifle that those in the national media tend to call an assault weapon, which it's not. It's a semi-automatic rifle. It looks like a military weapon, but it's no different than a semi-automatic rifle that's used for hunting. And matter of fact, people do use these for hunting, from what I understand, but mostly for self-defense. We've also seen some efforts that are going to come about next week in committee to increase background checks, those kind of things, establish registries, from what I'm hearing, through back doors. And the Second Amendment supporting community is very concerned about that. Louisiana is, even our governor, our Democrat governor, got the endorsement of the NRA and was proudly saying that he was a life member of the NRA when he won his election back in 2015. So Louisiana is a huge supporter of the Constitution and the Second Amendment, especially. And we're very, very concerned, those groups that I work with on a regular basis that do support that. We are already teaming together to get citizens to call in and write in and show up at the committee meeting to oppose that legislation.
So what is your concern about background checks?
Well, our concern about increasing background checks is that here in Louisiana, I'm a concealed carry permit holder. I've had a deeper background check than as deep as I had when I got a security clearance in the military. For that matter, when I got cleared for concealed carry permit here in Louisiana, I bought several firearms at gun shows here in the state just to see if I had to get a background check, and I did. Both times that I purchased firearms from a gun show, I had to have a background check. I even bought two in one in a 1 hour period and got two different background checks done on me because of that. So we think that they're strong enough here in the state, and we don't want to see any more, go any deeper into people's backgrounds. Now, does the system work all the time? No, apparently it doesn't. Many of the active shooter perpetrators that have committed these heinous crimes in the last few years have actually were supposed to fail background checks and should have failed. The shooter in South Carolina, as a matter of fact, at the African American church, should have failed the background check and ended up not failing that background check. So I would like to make sure and see that any holes that are in the existing system are filled and that we actually operate the system the way it's supposed to be, so that it'll catch those types of individuals. But you have to be careful on how far you go. There's great concern about mental health checks and people not getting due process because of the increase in checks on mental health and getting medical records into the system. So I'm not opposed to reinforcing the system as it is today, but we have to take great care in how far we go with that, so that people are ensured their right to due process.
So what type of reinforcement would you say might satisfy you and satisfy, say, other members of NRA and Second Amendment proponents?
Well, the one thing that I want to make sure happens is that the system is operated the way it's supposed to be operated, and it's not currently not all of the required incidents that are supposed to be put into the system that would keep somebody from buying a firearm are placed into the system. They're not placed in the system in a timely manner. We need to make sure we take a look at each step of that system to ensure first, before we make any other changes, that it's working appropriately. That I think is the first step. And then anything else after that, we have to go talk about. I'm a bit concerned about these fast moving TROs, temporary restraining orders, where people will be able to be put on a list and then go have authorities go into their homes or the place of business or both, and have their firearms removed under these fast moving temporary restraining orders. I'm concerned about that because usually you got to have some kind of probable cause to do that. And if you're just talking about what somebody said and those kind of things, we have to make sure we've struck the right balance. In the case of the Florida perpetrator, there were multiple failures down there with that gentleman, from the school to the local police to the sheriff to the responders to their school resource officer that resulted in those 17 fatalities. So we've got to make sure that our systems are working appropriately, make sure that our officers and our responders have the right training actually for eliminating gun-free zones in schools. I think that's a policy that would actually have a positive effect at preventing this type of action in public schools especially. I am for allowing teachers that are comfortable with firearms able to concealed carry in their own schools, and parents also. But what I'm not for is restricting law-abiding citizens' right to keep and bear arms any more than we already do, outside of making sure that the systems that we have already are fixed and they're working properly, and they're not.
Okay, by the way, I was just looking at the Facebook page, one of the pages, and somebody noted that the video is squishy. I looked at it, and it is. So I just sent you a message over Facebook with a good link. If you want to go ahead and post that on those pages, that'd be great.
Okay.
So, and I'll find out why it's squishy. That's, all kind of things happen on the internet. You just never know. as we know, especially Facebook this past week. So here's, I guess, the thing I don't quite understand in terms of guns in schools and trying to control the situation. Obviously, if you're able to stop people coming in with guns, then the chances of your being able to have something like this happening is reduced significantly. Am I correct?
Absolutely. That's why I want to see policies, especially here, well, anywhere in the United States, that will actually work, be implemented. One is not fortifying, but making the schools a harder target. Having it as a gun-free zone, not controlling single point or reduce the points of entry down to one or two. Making sure that every time I've gone into one of my children's public schools here in Louisiana, I have to show my driver's license. I have to get a sticker and put on my chest before I walk past the office. But you can do a little bit more formal control on that, controlling the entry points to the school, so the folks have to be funneled through that process.
Right. So that's actually,
those are good things. Yeah. Putting bulletproof glass, and if the classroom doors have windows on it, you can put automatic locks, so when the door closes, it's automatically locked, and have bulletproof glass in the windows. Those are all things that will actually work. I have lots of experience in protecting schools. When I was a wing commander in the Air Force, I had an elementary school on my installation. We were one of the first schools, if not the first, to run active shooter drills with the teachers and administrators on the weekends to see what would and would not work. And I got to tell you, Steve, even a shooter with a revolver, which was the first scenario that we tested, could get to the point where they could reload and shoot up to 7 people before my officers could respond and stop him or her. And they were only about 90 seconds away and were fully armed with military style, with military weapons in that case. So I've also worked and been the on-scene commander for actual active shooter situations that have been, they're so free flowing and fluid. You know, the last one that I did actually started outside of my installation and flowed onto the installation. So we had federal law enforcement, my forces responding, local law enforcement responding during the process of the active shooter. So it can be a very fluid situation, but the one thing that saved us was our training. The other thing that saved us was having good physical security in our facilities, and doing these tests and drills to make sure that we were covering all of our bases, which you can do. It doesn't, and the cost is there, but that's a cost that we have to bear. It's just like national security. You know, when you've got to put up the resources to have a strong national defense that's at the federal level, we've got to do the same thing for our schools and the facilities that need to be protected.
So it seems to me that the issue is point of entry. I mean, if money were not a factor, and if you could have numerous points of entry, but be able to man those, be able to allow the free flow of students, etc., to come in and out, then you really would not have a problem.
Well, not any one thing works in and of itself. That's the thing, is you have to have, we use what's called a layered defense. So the school resource officer being at the door and the single point of entry is one layer. Reinforced doors with self-locking locks. When the class starts and the door closes, the door is locked. And if there's a window in that door, having bulletproof glass in it, is another layer of defense. And then how teachers, administrators, and students are trained on a regular basis to respond to different types of situations is a third layer of defense. So yes, controlling single point of entry is a key to addressing the threat, but it's not the only key. But we don't do that in a very strict, formalized way. I mean, some schools do it, some don't. They all have entry points. They're spread out. They're in different types of facilities. They're in different types of settings. You know, you may have a school like in New Orleans that's surrounded by concrete and fences, which would be easy to control a single point of entry. And then you may have a school like Mandeville High School, which is spread out, has multiple buildings that are open and multiple entry points through the fences and those kind of things that have to be looked at more carefully. But you can secure those facilities with the minimal amount of interference with the kids and the teachers and the administrators. And really, I don't think it would really cost that much when you're thinking about government expenditures and how much we spend on some things in this country. The cost would be minimal considering the benefits that we're going to get out of it.
Okay, and by the way, those people who are watching on your Facebook page, Colonel Rob Maness Facebook page, I apologize for the squishiness and the blurriness of the video. I have no idea, but you know, this is the first time this happened on Facebook, so we'll just have to check on it. Again, these things do happen, but we will put the good video on that page also.
It is on the page now.
It is on the page. Okay, great, thanks. So based on what you're saying, it seems to me that at least there is a potential solution to reduce the number of say shootings, and that is to be able to at least, if possible, and that's the key, if possible, deal with the points of entry. And is this a technology issue? In other words, would there be some kind of technology that would allow rapid checking of anything metal, to be able to prevent something like this from happening? I mean, obviously airports, those lines are very long. I guess it's not technologically possible yet.
No, but metal detectors can be used. I've seen some schools in different parts of the country use metal detectors already as their kids flow into the class. We see that the Parkland school has directed that their kids have to use clear backpacks now. I'm not sure how that would impact the Cruz shooting because he was carrying an AR-15, which obviously won't fit into a backpack. I suspect that he got in through one of those multiple points of entry. It's a school with multiple facilities. It is kind of off by itself, but it doesn't have a fence that's with secured entry points around it. So that's one thing. Having bulletproof glass and secure doors with self-locking on them would also have been a positive factor in those kind of things. But I got to tell you, when the politicians are focused and some of the activist groups are overly focused on establishing gun control laws that have not proven effective, I think they're spinning their wheels, and that's what I'm concerned about. That's why I fight against just outright gun control laws that are going to restrict a law-abiding citizen's ability to keep and bear arms, because they're not effective. The only people they affect are the people that actually obey the law. The criminals aren't going to obey the law anyway. So we've got to come up with good policies based on experience. And there are thousands of people like me that have this type of experience here in the United States. I can tell you I'm not unique when it comes to my background. That would certainly offer to help secure these schools and make sure that the school's plan is workable and that it will function properly and those kind of things. So let's focus on policies that will actually work and resource expenditures that will actually work, and not spend so much time trying to pass legislation that's part of a either partisan or activist talking point that really hasn't been shown to be effective, in my view.
Exterior cameras. I mean, it seems to me that that by itself would have caught the guy carrying a big rifle.
Yeah, that's one method to do it. There is other technology that can actually detect and locate within a few feet gunshots specifically that could be put in schools. It's already in use in places like Chicago, Illinois, other major cities. So that type of technology, especially if the federal government's going to expend resources and offer grants to the states, that they may be able to get the funding for that type of system through those grants. But it's like national defense. These are our kids. They should be secure. I mean, heck, we secure our judges, we secure our criminals when they're at trial. Why shouldn't we secure our kids in a common sense and meaningful way? And let's get beyond these partisan and political talking points and actually implement ideas that will work.
Okay, one last question. I know we're coming to the end of the program. And again, those people who are watching, please share. Hit the share button, hit the like button. We'd like to get this out there. Hopefully the information is helpful to you. It certainly is helpful to me with my limited knowledge about, say, guns. and certainly my limited knowledge about what would be the best way to protect our students, our kids. So, do you know whether or not the state has any, say, commission, subcommission, committee, subcommittee that's specifically dealing and addressing this issue? I mean, obviously the education committee probably is going to address this particular issue, but a lot of times states have like a broadband commission, which is outside of the legislature, and I'm just wondering whether or not something like that would be useful. And it's not just a one-lap; it's something that could really bring people together to discuss the various possible ways to solve the problems.
I'm not specifically aware that the state or federal level has a commission that addresses this specific issue for schools, but I do know there are multiple school safety efforts going on. As a matter of fact, I'm very proud to see that the St. Tammany Public School Systems was just won an award as the best school safety, I think, in the state. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've looked at the things that we're talking about that could be under the standards before we had this rash of school shootings, which, by the way, have really not increased. I know there's been a lot in the media that they say that school shootings have increased, but when you go back and look at the historical data, actually all shootings and gun violence are on the downturn and have been reduced dramatically. So that's another talking point that gets put out there, and sometimes if it gets pushed by the wrong outlet that has a big reach, it can become perceived as fact and truth when it's really not. But I would like to see the school systems be organized around the issue specifically of school safety and security, to make sure that they're sharing good ideas, and make sure that if there's an idea that doesn't work, that it gets passed and communicated to all of the school systems in the state in an effective and rapid manner, because timing is everything in these situations, and you never know when you could stop the next murderer.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's our goal. Okay, so Rob Maness, thank you so much, and if you don't mind, just hold on. I'm going to hit some buttons. By the way, today at 4 o'clock, I will be interviewing Elizabeth Crisp of The Advocate, and we will be talking about the Louisiana legislative session. So that should be really interesting from her perspective of what's going on in the session. So that's 4 o'clock today, Friday, 4 o'clock. So, Rob, if you don't mind, just hold on for a second. I'm going to hit some buttons and apologize for the blurriness. I'll have to figure out what the heck is going on with that. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you.